Welcome to the Perspective Knoll, a channel that creates audiobooks from original stories and including some fan fiction short stories in between. If this is something you're into, then feel free to like and subscribe so that you don't miss any of our new content.
Chapter 18. A Secret Passage. A short amount of time had passed while everyone was getting to know one another. Julius was the one in charge of the squad, and the blonde-haired man was named Isaac, and he turned out to be the oldest in the group. Mary was the brunette who spoke to them earlier, and this was her first year out of basic and already wishing that she hadn't signed the papers. There was a pair of best friends who had grown up together, and they were Mark and Alan, and no doubt straight out of high school. Their spirits seemed abnormally high given the situation. Lastly, there was a woman who was a bit shy and guarded, and yet the only thing she had spoken so far was her name, which was Kim. Shawn had asked either of them if they had acquired some powers of their own, like he had. One by one, they all tried different ways that might surface an ability. It was a comical sight, but in the end, nothing happened. Sarah was getting impatient, and she felt that the troll known as Argatha would soon come to check up on things. "Look, I know you are all excited here, but we are not safe. How often does the troll check in on you guys?" Sarah asked as she kept glancing back up the tunnel entrance. "Random," answered Isaac. "Which is bad because he can show up within 45 minutes of another visit or as much as 6 hours. The last time he was here was about 20 minutes ago, so we should be fine." "So, how does the ore get to the surface?" Sarah asked, and she was not convinced that they were out of danger. "The troll comes by with a wheelbarrow and loads up what we gather over there," answered Alan as he pointed to a small pile of black stones over by the entrance. "He doesn't always extract the ore when he comes by to check on us either. Another one of those things that he does randomly." "Speaking of random, what else can be in the mines here?" Mary asked as she sat on the ground and picked up a few stones and examined them. "It was used a lot back in the day, that's plain to see, so is there anything else in here besides this Orchander ore?" Sarah had bit her lip, and she had little to no knowledge of the mines around Lufforain. "I don't know much about the mines. Any of them. I think there's something else we should be on the lookout for in here," began Shawn. He told the soldiers of the shadow being that spoke with him while outside the entrance, and that it sped off inside the mines, and as far as he knew, still hadn't left. "Well, we haven't seen anything outside of this place for almost a week." "That's when we get our breaks," said Julius, wiping sweat from his forehead. "But man, we don't hear anything in this place. Out there near the big chasm, sure you can hear any damn thing bouncing off all the walls, but these little side tunnels here, once you're within 10 feet or more, nothing. Shawn, I don't think we need to worry about the Shadow Man right now. We need to get these people out of here," Sarah insisted. Shawn knew that Sarah was right. Now he had the feeling that they had spent too much time talking, and for all they knew, Argatha could be waiting just outside the tunnel to smash them all. No one else argued the fact, and the 6 soldiers grabbed their shovels and pickaxes for weapons and were now ready for a fight. They left the shallow tunnel and entered the path that rounded the chasm in the middle, and with hardly any light to guide them, or give them any sense of depth, the vast openness of the deep unknown was purely an ominous feeling. They turned back down the way they came, and as they did so, that's when they saw him, Argatha. The troll held out a large flaming torch, and then panic and shock filled them all immediately. Julius raised his shovel and was about to run at him, but Sarah stopped him with her arm. She realized that there was something different about him. Argatha slowly turned down a path that led deeper into the chasm, and there was an hardness to his walk that was different from his usual relaxed way. Argatha walked stiffer now, as if someone or something was behind him, holding a sharp object to his back and was forcing him down the pathways. Sarah and Shawn agreed to follow him while the soldiers wanted nothing more to do with the mines. Sarah gave them a summoned candle, and there was just enough magic in it to lead them out of the mines without Sarah having to be present. Sarah briefly explained to Shawn, once the soldiers had begun their walk out of the mines, that conjured items can only last so long. Even less so if the one who conjured the item is not present. It was a bit of a complicated matter, but Sarah had no time to teach a magic lesson. The pair of them kept a distance from Ashram, and Shawn couldn't shake the feeling that he and Sarah were about to witness something terrible. The path gradually grew steeper the further they trailed on, and it curved inward now to the chasm. A few minutes passed and they finally reached a landing. Ashram still hadn't acted as though he was aware of their presence but kept going in silence. He turned down a side chamber, and this one at first appeared as though it was a dead end. There was plainly a wall straight ahead of the troll, but instead of turning around, he spoke in a language unknown to even Sarah, and as if by magic, the wall faded out of existence. Ashram moved on, but Sarah insisted that they proceed with extreme caution. Shawn believed he was already doing so, but she told him otherwise. The path now opened into a large circular room, and it was filled with treasure. Gold and silver and other odd materials that glistened greatly in the low light of the torch and the candles. In the middle of the chamber was a large object sitting upon a raised, handcrafted stone. Ashram walked right up to the stone and knelt and was silent. "What the hell is this place?" Shawn whispered. "It looks like a tomb for the pharaohs." "I don't know what that is," Sarah replied in a confused tone, but was admiring the large gem sitting on the floor by her foot. "What's a tomb?" "Come on, you have to know what a..." "No, Shawn, I don't know what a pharaoh is or whatever you said it could be." She interrupted him annoyingly. "Pharaoh, like from Egypt? You know where I'm from, back on Earth?" Shawn tried explaining but knew that it was pointless. Sarah knew little more of Earth as he did of Lufforain. Shawn gave out a low sigh. "Okay, so what do you think he's doing now?" "I have no clue. I don't know how that troll was able to know of this place. That language he spoke to make the wall vanish was not the tongue of the trolls in this part of the world or any other." Sarah then picked up a nearby gem and examined it for a second. "This is odd." "Yikes, yeah, the size of that gem you're holding, it's the same size as your head," laughed Shawn. "More than that, Shawn. If I'm not mistaken, this is an unpintile gemstone. The sapphire color and the fact that it's transparent is its best giveaway. It's used for burials. It's more than just for looks, it's a way for the spirits to remain tethered to their resting place. Some upon the planet think that if in life you have done terrible deeds, then your soul will end up in a place that... Well, let's just say if you believe in eternal torture, then you'd be willing to go to great lengths to not get there. I think that stone that Ashram is in front of is actually a sarcophagus." Again, just like the pharaohs, Shawn rolled his eyes and then a thought struck him. It was a scene from a movie he had seen called The Mummy, starring Brendan Fraser. Shawn remembered what happened to the diggers who forced their way into a sarcophagus and were sprayed with some sort of acid salt, and their flesh almost instantly melted off. This is bad. If these unpintile gems are here, then it's for a reason. Sarah looked back at Ashram and the stone structure in front of him. Something intends to walk again, and perhaps against the spirit's wishes. "So, what do we do?" asked Shawn, feeling more and more like the movie he had playing in his head was about to become a very real nightmare. No sooner had Shawn asked the question that Ashram began speaking in more of the same language that was so unfamiliar. Yet it did not take long for his words to begin to have meaning, because the other unpintile gems began to glow. The gems radiated all about the chamber, and there was a humming that followed it. Ashram now stood up and his hands were raised to the ceiling, and his voice was so loud that it now filled the chamber, and reverberated from all around them. Shawn looked at the sarcophagus, which had now begun to float, and it too was now glowing from a source that was on the top of it, but Shawn could not see what it was. Sarah tugged on Shawn's sleeve and pointed at the troll and then gave a thumbs-down gesture, and then she stepped forward, and held her hands out and readied a spell. Shawn was pretty sure that she meant to take the troll down by means of magic. So, wanting to aid her, he took a few steps forward and was now in line with her and looked at some of the rocks along the floor and made them float up in the air. Then one by one he shot rocks at the troll's back. Yet to his surprise, they all struck an unseen wall just before it should have hit its target. "I got this," said Sarah, and she formed a purple ball of energy and it pulsed with sparks of electricity. "Take cover, Shawn." No sooner did the words leave her mouth that she threw the ball at her target, and Shawn dove aside behind a mound of riches and waited. There was a blinding light at first, followed by a deafening blast. When the noise had subsided and the only light that came from the chamber was that of the torch that Ashram had held, and was on the floor next to the large stone in the center. Shawn looked to his left and saw Sarah still standing there, and she looked rather pleased with the results. Ashrim was lying on the floor motionless, and all the gems had been extinguished. "What do you think he was trying to do?" Shawn asked. "I honestly believe he was trying to bring back to life whoever is in that sarcophagus. These gems were filled with energy, to be able to shine so brightly. Something powerful is." Her words trailed off, and for a moment, Shawn couldn't figure out why, but as he put his focus to the center of the room, he realized that this was bad. The sarcophagus was not glowing anymore, nor was it floating, but there was a top piece, like a lid that was slowly sliding off. Soon it fell to the ground with an echoing thud, and then a figure slowly sat up from within. Sarah and Shawn both froze in fear and uncertainty as they waited for whatever it was emerging from its slumber to get its bearings. The figure seemed human-like. Then it struck Shawn as more than a coincidence that this could be the shadow being that had spoken with him earlier. The being then stood up, and that's when it revealed a pair of large bat-like wings. It stretched them out and inspected each one carefully. "Shawn, we need to leave," said Sarah in a shaky voice. But before he could answer, the being suddenly leapt up into the air and glided over to them. It landed and stood nearly 7 feet tall and was a slender man with dark brown skin. A pair of fangs were exposed on its lower lip, and the red eyes were so intense that it was hard not to look at anything else. It wore a pair of black dress pants and nothing to cover its chest or its talons for feet. His chest was exposed, and the area above his heart had a scar. "I thought we'd meet again." The voice was deep, and he looked at Shawn when he spoke. "And this time it's under much more desirable circumstances." A grin graced his face, and then he turned to Sarah. "I've seen you as well, though you were busy at the time our paths intersected." Sarah was too scared to speak. Clearly this large creature was beyond her capabilities, and she wondered how much longer she had left to live. Shawn, on the other hand, was a bit calmer, and he did recognize the man's voice. "So, you were just waiting for a body to get you back into your own?" Shawn guessed, and the being merely nodded its head. "Introductions are required. My name is Lord Lufforain, and I have been away for some time." "Who are you?" Fremdel spoke with such confidence that it made him sound as if nothing could ever bother him nor overpower him. "My name is Shawn, and this here is my partner in crime, Sarah." Shawn instantly regretted his choice of words, introducing Sarah as a partner in crime to a stranger. He thought it would send the wrong message about his character. "I'm pleased to meet the pair of you." Fremdel turned around and looked at the troll's lifeless body near the sarcophagus. "Someone had to die." He then returned his gaze back to Shawn. "I wasn't about to kill you. You bear the ring of one of my most trusted offspring." That's when Shawn looked down at the ring that Jolene had given him and noticed that the gem upon it was glowing brightly. Fremdel eyed it too, and then his expression tensed up with agony and looked as if he was about to start crying. "I knew the maker of that ring very well, but it was Profar who I grieve for." Fremdel turned and pointed out to the far corner of the room, and there, Shawn could make out a skeleton leaning up against the wall. "He had the ring crafted so that he could communicate with me since I was already dead, and he still needed my guidance. That is why you were able to see me, Shawn, because when the bearer wears the ring, they can see the spirits of the vampires long since past." Shawn's brain locked up for a second and had a hard time getting around the word, vampire. He shook his head and tried to shake off the overwhelming feeling of surprise and horror that was trying to wash over him. "So, I take it vampires' souls don't ever move on?" "We do. You see, my sarcophagus is made up of entirely Orchanda material and infused with old magic from my people. Blood magic. The Umpintile gems help to keep my soul here in this dimension. My people wanted me to have the chance to rise again, but only when they were ready." "So then why now, of all times?" asked Shawn, still feeling like he was catching his breath. "Call it a sense of change that I know is for me. Plus, having that ring back in my presence means I have a promise now to uphold," Fremdel answered, and he stretched his wings and flexed his muscles and let out a low growl. "I will lead you out and then I will leave you. May I ask something of you?" Shawn shrugged. "Ask away." "Can I have my son's ring?" Fremdel eyed the jewelry. "Why even ask? If it's your son's ring, then sure, take it." Shawn then pulled the ring off and then thought of what Jolene had told him concerning it. That he was to bring it back to her. "You hesitate, why?" Fremdel asked with a raised eyebrow. "It's not really mine to give away. It was in possession of my trainer." She had it and told me that it would amplify my powers and said for this quest that it would help me. How do you think she got the ring in the first place? I mean, wasn't it on that body over there, hidden in this room? I'm sorry to correct you and your trainer, but this does nothing for magic or otherwise. It's strictly to see the spirits of vampires and to communicate with them, nothing more. Answered Framdal, but then a scowl came across his face. As for how the ring left this room, I have seen how my son died. I have seen who took the ring off his body after they butchered him. Damn dogs. Dogs killed your son? Asked Shawn, not ready to believe that animals came in and robbed the vampire of a ring. Werewolves. Our constant enemy, and the scar upon my chest is where they had once removed my heart. Beyond those flea-infested fiends, I have no idea how they had the ring, and then somehow, your trainer was in possession of it. Is she a werewolf? Not that I know of. Answered Shawn, and the history lesson that Valinar the Wood Elf had told him and Charles their first day in Lufforain filled his mind. If I give you the ring, can you help us with something? Shawn asked and looked at Sarah, who now seemed frozen in time. Sarah? Hello? Shawn waved a hand in front of her face, and nothing happened. She's absent, said Framdal. I have her frozen in a way that she has no idea what's happening around her. That's creepy, So anyways, if you can help us with a small task, I will give you the ring. Sound fair? Framdal paused for a moment and took a step back to ponder the idea, but their eyes locked, and he nodded his head and said, Deal. Wait, just like that? You don't want to know the details of this mission? As long as I can be quick with it, it doesn't matter what it is. Framdal then snapped his fingers and Sarah then snapped back to life. Oh, Creator save me, you're a vampire, aren't you? It was the first thing out of Sarah's mouth, and still just as awestruck as ever. Framdal merely nodded his head and looked back at Shawn and told him to follow his lead out of the mines. As a vampire, Framdal's vision was like taking a stroll outside on a clear summer day as he navigated the dark tunnels. Before they knew it, the daylight was peering through the entrance and Shawn had never been so relieved to see the light of day. Framdal, however, stayed in the shadow of the mines and stared outward. What is it? Asked Shawn, and then realized that vampires don't do well in sunlight. Unless he was like Blade, the Day Walker, and a hybrid of the vampire ranks, then it wouldn't bother him as much. Just letting my eyes get adjusted. I've been dead for some time now. I'll be fine in a minute, Framdal answered, and the first thought that Shawn had was, he's a Day Walker. So, tell me again, what our new vampire friend is going to do in exchange for that ring? Asked Sarah with her hands on her hips and not at all willing to trust their new companion. Shawn looked up to the sky and realized it was now morning. He looked back to Sarah and answered her question. We go to the building where this, so-called Steel Goggles is working from. Have Framdal make quick work of him and then rescue Leo Mandarin and try to figure out why he is making more paintings against his will.